Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of Ask robtrek. And I got a question in my last stream about the dual memory card slots in our E-M1 Mark II and E-M1 Mark III. And the question is when one memory card becomes full, how do you get the camera to automatically switch to the second card to continue shooting? Because sometimes you get like a memory card full error and you know you have a second card in your memory slot that's been formatted and empty and ready to go, but the camera will not take more pictures. And that's the question I'm going to be answering today. The short answer is you just go into the card slot settings, you change it to auto switch, and now when memory card slot 1 becomes full, the camera will automatically switch to card slot 2 and start recording there so you can continue shooting, assuming card slot 2 is empty. However, you may have noticed there are several other settings in the menu in addition to auto switch. There was standard, there's dual independent up with an up arrow, dual independent with a down arrow, and then there's dual same with an up arrow and dual same with a down arrow. And then there's also subsets of like slot 1, slot 2, where you want to put your movies into slot 1 or 2, or also different folders that you can assign. So we're going to dive into all of that and explain each one for you so you can fully understand how the dual card slot system works on your Olympus E-M1 Mark II or 3 camera. All right, so let's go ahead and look at the menus. I have the E-M1 Mark III here, but it'd be the same on the E-M1 Mark II. And the first thing you'll notice here is I have a no card in camera indicator here. So let's go ahead and put 2 memory cards in. I'm going to put a 32 gig on top. I'm going to put a 64 gig in the bottom. And we're all set. Now let's go into the menu. And what you want to do is scroll down to your custom menu setting and then go into menu H. And I like to think of menu H as hardware because that's what I think memory is on a camera. It's actually hardware. So we're in menu H, and this is where we go into our card slot settings. And I click over to the right, and you'll notice a little small arrow here that I can go right again. And the default setting, when you have 2 memory cards in the camera, is standard. And this is where I think one of my viewers ran into trouble is when you're in this mode, when memory card slot 1 becomes full, it does not automatically switch to memory card slot 2 so you can continue shooting. Even if this memory card slot is empty, meaning the card is empty, you know, it's been formatted and all that. So what you need to do is just go into auto switch mode. And now when memory card slot 1 becomes full, assuming memory card slot 2 is not full, it'll automatically switch to memory card slot 2 so you can continue shooting. All right, and so that's the short answer for how to get it to switch from card slot 1 to card slot 2. However, when you read the description here, what does it say? It says when designated card slot becomes full, switches to the other card to continue. You'll notice that it doesn't say when card slot 1 becomes full, it'll switch to card slot 2. And there's a reason for that. And then when we go back up to the standard, you'll see that it says records to assigned card only. And there's a reason it says that very specifically. And then before I get out of this, okay, if I keep scrolling down, you'll see additional settings here, and I'll talk about those in a minute. But let's go back to auto switch and click OK. You'll notice that below the save settings, right, there's a photo save slot and a card slot we can choose, and a movie save slot and the card slot that we can choose. So if we scroll down, right now we're telling the camera, and this is the default setting, to save photos to card slot 1. And then down here, the camera's saying save videos to card slot number 2. And if you remember, I always put the larger card slot in card slot 2. Now, going back to the photo save slot, if I click over to the right, let me get my finger off the touch screen. If I click over to the right, I can change this to card slot 2. I can change movies to card slot 1. Or I can save photos and movies both to card slot 1. So there's kind of a lot of possibilities here that you have to kind of think through. But this is why when you go to auto switch and standard, it doesn't say when card slot 1 becomes full, write to card slot 2. It's because those settings, those are independent of, you can independently assign which card slot you want to save photos and movies. All right, so hopefully that makes sense. Photos will be saved to slot 1, movies will be saved to slot 1, but let's change movies back to slot number 2. So now photos in slot 1, movies in slot 2. And if we go back to our save settings, we left off on auto switch. So hopefully this makes more sense now. When the designated card becomes full, it switches to the other card. And the designated card was assigned here, right? Photos are designated to slot 1, movies are designated to slot 2. Let's look at the next setting. We have dual independent, but you'll notice there's a dual independent and there's a little down arrow here first. Just ignore what it says here. Look at this arrow first. And then if I click down again, now we have dual independent with an up arrow. Again, just ignore this because I want to talk about this up and down arrow. And then there's dual same down arrow, dual same up arrow, and then we go back to standard. So let's go back to dual independent with the down arrow. Now the up arrow and the down arrow is significant because that determines whether or not it's going to write to the second card. So when you see a down arrow, that actually means stop writing when the first card is full. And the way I remember it is down arrow points down to the ground, so you come to a full stop. So it'll stop writing to both cards when one of the cards becomes full that you're writing to. And then the up arrow means go, okay? Go to the next card. And I like to think of the up arrow pointing up to the sky, and this is how I remember it. The up arrow is pointing up to the sky, meaning the sky's the limit. You can take as many photos as you want, on 2 card slots. So down means stop, up means go. Down, I remember down means stop because it hits the ground, and up I remember as continue or go because it's pointing up to the sky. Sky's the limit. Just a little memory trick that I use to remember what the up and down arrows mean. So let's go ahead and look at the menu and then read the description and see how that plays out. All right, so let's look at dual independent again. So now we're on dual independent down arrow, and it says here it'll save to both cards applying their respective settings. And this is an important line also where it says respective settings. I'll come back to that. And remember I said the down arrow means stop, right? So what does it say here? If one card becomes full, the other card cannot be saved to. So when you're saving one picture to both cards at the same time, then this card becomes full, the camera's going to stop and say card full. And you're not going to be able to take any more pictures in this mode. So this acts as a strict backup type setting. And then if we go to dual independent up, without even reading it, you should remember that the up arrow means go, right? So what's it going to do? Save to both cards applying their respective settings, and I'll come back to that. Even if one card becomes full, the other card can still be saved to. So now you're writing the memory or writing pictures to both memory cards at the same time. And then this one gets full. Camera, because there's an up arrow here, will continue writing to the second card, assuming you have a larger card or space left on this card. So I did start with a 32 gig here and a 64 gig here. And then if we look at dual same, when we see the down arrow, you should remember automatically that that means if either card becomes full, it's going to stop. And that's what it says. If one card becomes full, the other card cannot be written to. And this says saves to both cards applying the same settings, and I'll come back to that. And then dual same up, right? Saves to both cards at the same time, but if one card becomes full, it'll continue writing to the second card because we have the up arrow means go, right? So card 1 is full, go to card 2. All right, so let's go back up to, we're in auto switch, let's go to the next one. So this is dual independent arrow down. And again, it says saves to both cards, applying their respective settings. What does that mean? Because it's not this. I'll click OK. It's not this because these are the assigned settings. These are not respective settings. Respective settings is actually in the super control panel. You'll see that we have card slot 1 and card slot 2. Card slot 1 is set to save as a large fine JPEG, same as card slot 2, large fine JPEG. So these are the respective settings. Now some people, what they like to do is they like to record RAWs, right, to card slot 1 and record JPEGs to card slot 2. So we'll just click OK here, go into the menu. Now this should make sense. Saves to both cards, applying their respective settings. The respective settings are now RAWs on card slot 1, JPEGs on card slot 2. So that's what this means by saving to both cards, applying their respective settings. If one card becomes full, the other card cannot be saved to. So once this becomes full, it's not going to write to this card. That's because, as we said, this has the down arrow, so it means stop. So you'll always have a full backup of both pictures until one of the cards becomes full. All right, let's go to the next setting, dual same. So we know what the down arrow means is that if one card becomes full, the other cannot be saved to. But dual same says that saves to both cards applying the same settings. So now we no longer have respective settings for each card. So I'm going to click OK to set that. Now if we look at the Super Control panel, you'll see that card slot 1 is set for large fine JPEG. Card slot 2, it may be hard to see, but it also says large fine JPEG, but it's grayed out. So if I try to go in here and change it, it changes them both at the same time because I have it set to what? Dual same, right? I can't change them, the respective settings for each card slot. So dual same is forcing whatever settings you set for resolution and image size and all the other thing to be exactly identical on both cards. And then the down arrow means once one card is full, the other card cannot be written to, so the camera will stop. Dual same, up arrow means even if this becomes full, it'll continue writing to this card without any problem. You just won't have a backup anymore. Now you're only writing to one card, right? So hopefully that all makes sense. All right, let's go back to the dual independent mode where I showed you could save RAWs to one card and JPEGs to the other, and why you may not want to do that with our Olympus cameras. Okay, so now we're in dual independent. If one card becomes full, the other cannot be saved to. So it doesn't really matter here. You can do RAW plus JPEG and the camera will stop. But when you use dual independent with the up arrow, what's a little deceiving here, it says even if one card becomes full, the other card can be saved to. But remember, in dual independent, if we go back to the Super Control panel, you'll notice that we're saving RAWs to slot number 1 and JPEGs to slot number 2. So when slot number 1 becomes full with raw images, slot number 2 is only recording JPEG. So even though you can continue shooting, you will no longer be saving your raw images anymore. You'll only have JPEGs from this point forward. So I recommend really either never use dual independent with the up arrow, or just always use just don't use dual independent at all. Just always use dual same up arrow. And this is typically the setting that I use for all of my workflow. All right, so I'm sorry for glossing over those last few items, but they're really not critical to the actual function and workflow to using the dual memory card slots and all the different settings. If you want, I can cover that in another video. But either way, I really appreciate you guys watching. I hope you found that helpful. If so, consider subscribing to the channel. Maybe buy me a coffee in the links below. But either way, thanks for watching, and hopefully we'll see you again soon.